Hey everyone, welcome to the Breaking Point YouTube channel. If you're liking the videos, hit that subscribe button. Now let's get to the hunting action.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. On this week's Break It Down video, we're going to be talking about fall food plots, kind of the traditional way. We don't do any no-till drilling on our farm. We just don't have any of the equipment, and we found better success on our plots kind of doing it the traditional way. The first thing we're going to talk about is kind of how we keep our food plots ready to plant come fall. So starting from spring all the way through the summer, how we keep our ground ready to go for when it's time to plant.
So for our fall food plots, I typically start prepping them in the spring. So like usually around second week in May, we'll do our first herbicide spraying, because a lot of the plots that we planted from the previous fall, a lot of the mixes will throw some winter rye in there. So the rye is gonna overwinter, and it's one of the first things to green up in the springs, which is nice because the deer and the turkeys will be in that rye early on. But in our area of southern Michigan, usually about the second week of May, the rye's starting to really take off. It's probably around 2 to 2.5 foot, and that's about when we choose to terminate it before it gets too tall, and then that's our first initial spraying. And then what we'll typically do is just kind of keep spraying that throughout the year, usually about every 8 weeks. So you end up with like 3 sprayings throughout the course of the summer, just to keep the weeds down. So when it does come time to plant in the fall, which when we say fall, we're usually talking about early August, sometimes late July, depending on the crop you're planting, you'll have a nice clean seed bed, and makes it a lot easier for your plots to not have the competition from the weeds.
Well, are there any other options? Say you're someone that doesn't have the time to spray it all year long, or they just don't want to see that bare dirt all year long.
Yeah, I mean, we've done this in the past too. There's a lot of options, especially if you have a no-till drill. But even without a drill, you can plant like some cover crops. You can plant a spring planting and keep it throughout the summer, and then terminate it when you're getting closer to your fall planting dates. What we've done in the past, and it's getting pretty popular, is you can plant buckwheat after you terminate the rye in May. You can go ahead and broadcast buckwheat in there, terminate your rye, and then you'll run a cultipacker over it, kind of pack down the rye on top of it, and we've had good success with that. The buckwheat will come up, it germinates really quick, and then it'll keep the weeds from coming up. It kind of outcompetes the weeds. You'll get a few weeds, but it's a good option if you want to have a cover crop. And then about 10 weeks later, depending on your fall planting date, you can, if you want to stay no-till, you can broadcast your fall plot in the buckwheat, and it's kind of the same thing. You terminate the buckwheat however you choose, herbicide, and then you can pack it again.
If you're starting a new plot and it's like midsummer, it's kind of the exact same process as far as keeping your ground ready to plant as far as spraying goes. But with a new plot, obviously you're going to probably have to mow it for the first time before you do your first spraying. You're probably going to have to carve it out with a mower of some sort, and then you're going to want to create as much sunlight as you possibly can to that food plot, whether that's just cutting big branches down or taking some trees out and allowing as much sunlight as you can into that plot. But yeah, as far as spraying goes, it's kind of the same process. I just did a new plot in Iowa. It was like middle of the summer, kind of late to the ball game, and I carved it out with a mower, and then I've sprayed it twice now, and that'll be all I do for this year. The 2 sprayings killed it pretty good, and it's pretty much bare dirt now.
Yeah, so what we're talking about is a new plot versus like an existing plot that you've already, had established. It's pretty much the same process, but new plots it's a little more work because there might be some brush you got to get rid of, or some small trees. And my advice is to get rid of the trees, because sun is always one of the limiting factors for your food plot. And if you've got a decent sized tree in the middle of the food plot, it's going to canopy out, and you're not going to get much growth underneath it. But it looks cool, and you feel like you're giving the wildlife more cover, but it's always going to limit your food plot. So I would say clear as much as you possibly can. And then another thing about starting, we like to start our spraying early in the spring. It just makes it easier, because if you have to go in and do a mowing and then spraying, it eliminates that whole mowing part of it. So if you can go in like mid-May, before stuff takes off too much, and get your first spraying, it's going to make life easier for you when you go to do your fall planting. Because by the time you go to plant, you're going to have, like I said, a nice clean weed-free seed bed, and it's going to work up a lot better than it would if it had some root system in there from whatever was growing in there. So that's how we prefer to do it. It just makes it easier in the long run if you're able to get out to your property and do that. I would suggest that.
The next subject we're going to talk about is the types of fall plots, what we're planting now versus what we planted before, and what's worked and what hasn't.
So yeah, on our farm, in the past we've planted a lot of blends, and there's great blends out there that work really good. I previously used to plant a lot of like a grain blend. I would have oats in winter rye, and then we would add maybe like an annual clover, a brassica mix, maybe some radishes, and that's a great mix. But timing is critical on that, because you got different seeds that really should be planted at different times. The grains you typically want to plant, in Michigan, late August, close to Labor Day. But your brassicas and your clovers, those do better when you plant early August. So if you're planting a blend like that, I think you got to compromise and as far as planting dates, and maybe go in between the two ideal planting dates. So maybe more like an August 15th to August 20th planting date. Because if you plant your grains, your oat and your wheat too early, it gets too tall and it's not as attractive. And we've done that through experience. We've seen that. And if you plant your brassicas too late, they'll germinate, they'll come up, they just won't get the growth that you want on them. That's the only drawback to planting a blend that I see. So that's what we've done in the past. Or if you want, you can separate your grains. You can do a plot of your grain mix and shoot for more of a September 1st planting date, and then just keep your brassicas as a strictly a brassica plot, and then you can shoot for earlier in the year. And on that subject, the last few years we've moved our planting date for brassicas even earlier. We've had great luck the last few years. If we see a rain coming late July, like that last week in July, we're definitely going to get our brassicas in, because it seems to be a good date. You get a lot more growth. Your brassicas get nice and tall, and you'll have a lot of tonnage that way. So timing wise, if you see a rain coming late July, definitely get your brassicas in.
What's going on, everybody? Hope you're enjoying this week's content on the show. If you haven't already, check out our YouTube membership called the TBP Club. It allows you early access to all of our YouTube videos. It allows you access to our members only live Q&As, which is once a quarter. And it allows full access to our Rut Live Grand Prize giveaway. If you haven't already, check out the TBP Club.
Now let's talk about kind of what we're doing now, and kind of why we've changed what we're doing and how it's kind of worked for us throughout the last couple of years.
Yeah, so on our farm, everybody's farm's different. Everybody's location, state they hunt in, different. Here in Michigan, in the past, we've planted a lot of plots that were designed for late season, kind of like maybe like Thanksgiving on through the late season, and they've turned out good, but we just haven't had success in late season here, so we kind of shifted our focus more to plantings that are going to be better during October, November. So that's just kind of what we've done here. So the last few years we've planted a lot more perennial clovers and chicory in with that, and still some brassicas, because brassicas are great for October, November. We've experimented with some alfalfa this year, and we're excited about that. So we've we've kind of turned a lot of our farm into those types of plantings, and the tractability of those have been great for during the archery season and the first couple weeks of the gun season.
So last year, to add on to that, we turned our big food plot in the back here, which is what is it, like 5 acres?
It's 4 acres.
4 acres. We turned that whole entire plot into a pure clover plot. We had half of it was clover that my dad frost seeded that spring, and then last year as a fall planting we planted clover with some chicory in it, and that plot come early October, late September into early October was just stupid. We had so many deer out there every night, and that ended up turning into a lot of success for us last year, early October into late October. I shot my buck, I think it was October 19th, and then turn around, my dad shot his first buck last year in late October. What was the day? It was in the 28th?
27th, I think.
27th, and then right after that he shot his second buck, and it just, last year went to show that kind of our mindset is planning those food plots for the October time frame really paid off for us, because we had so many does on our farm, and the biggest buck around's going to be here just because we have all those does, and we saw it firsthand. Like after my buck was out here, we had my dad's buck move in, and then after he shot his first buck, that second buck moved right back in, and it played out really nice for us.
Yeah, and the great thing about the perennial food plots is, you're gonna get 4, 5, 6 years out of them, even longer. So they're there every year. You still have to maintain them, though. It's not like they're easy, but you're not replanting every year. It's and we're pretty good about keeping up on. We clip our perennial clovers probably 3 times a year, and we're as nice as it is to get away from herbicide. It's kind of, I think it's impossible. There's still, you gotta control stuff with herbicide. So, and there's a couple herbicides that you can use on your perennial plots that work great, just to kind of keep the broadleaves and the grasses at bay. So that's kind of how we've been managing our farm with the perennial plots, and it's been working out really good.
Now we're going to get into how we go about planting certain plots. So the difference in how we'd go about planting clover versus maybe a grain mix when the seeds got to be a little deeper. So you want to touch on that, Dad?
Yeah. So preparing the seed bed, all these different types of seeds are different. So let's say a smaller seeded plot like your clovers, chicory, brassicas, we're going to keep it clean. We're going to keep it sprayed all year, and then when it comes time to plant, we'll do like a final spraying like a couple days before we plant, and then we'll work the ground up with our disc. Try not to disc too awful deep. We just trying to scratch up the soil so we have a nice seed bed, and then we'll obviously we'll spread our fertilizers. Make sure you do a soil test, because that's going to save you money in the long run. Add your lime, add your fertilizer, and then do your disking, get that worked into the ground. And then if it's with the small seeds, we'll run a cultipacker across the disked up ground, get it nice and firm, and then we'll spread our perennial seeds, and then we'll cultipack again. So it's a 2 cultipacking process, but it's definitely critical for the small seeds. Now on the larger seeded stuff, when you get into your oats and your wheat and your rye, winter peas, the same thing. We'll spread our fertilizer, lime, just get it into the ground, and then we'll spread the seed, and then we have a nice drag. We'll drag the seed in because those seeds, you want to get them covered up if possible. Usually about an inch or inch and a half of dirt on top of them. So we'll drag across there, and then we'll use our Cultipacker to get it nice firm packing. And we don't have a lot of big equipment. We just have small equipment, but it can be a lot of work, but you can get the same results with the smaller equipment. We've been doing it for years, and it's worked out good.
So how would you go about a plot that's kind of, back in the woods somewhere, or maybe you got to get across a wet spot where you can get equipment into? How do you go about planting those plots?
Yeah, so it definitely can be done. Done it for years here. We've got some spots. They're actually in a swamp, but there's a little bit of high ground that we've cleared out, and we've never really had equipment in there. It's just a matter of starting to spray herbicides, to keep it clean. Like I said, mid-May, and then we'll do 3 sprayings a year. So you're dealing with a clean food plot, but you're not working up the ground. And so in those types of situations, your best bet is going to be a very small seeded type of plot. So your clovers, your chicories, your brassicas, because you're just spreading your fertilizer and your seed, and it's all about timing, because you're hoping for a good rain to get that seed soil contact. So if you see a good rain coming, late July, early August, it's all timing. You want to try to get your seed down right before that, and preferably, if it's a hard rain, typically when you're planting food plots, you don't necessarily want the really hard rain. It could wash your seed out, but in these situations, a hard rain is your friend, because it's going to drive that seed down into the soil and give you good contact. So we've established our plots like that for years, and they've turned out really good. So it's definitely an option, not having equipment.
Well, we appreciate you guys following us along today on this week's Break It Down video. We hope you guys are getting your fall plots in, having some good rains to follow up with it, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.